How are you? I hope you guys are having an amazing day today. Hello and welcome to Glowmas. Today's Glowmas video is a little bit impromptu. It wasn't one I had scheduled or was planning to do. It was something that I was really interested in talking about. On December 16th, a Red Table Talk interview with Gabbie Hanna and Perez Hilton was posted on the Red Table Talk Facebook. Now, this was not the original Red Table Talk. It was a spin-off that they're doing now with the Estefan family. Obviously, Jada Smith started Red Table Talk and her daughter Willow is on it. And now the Estefan family is doing their own version of this show. Now, I've actually seen a few episodes of this show, the Estefan version, prior to this episode being posted. So I had liked the show and liked the dynamic. I thought it was pretty interesting conversations for the most part. I liked the guests that they had on, but I saw that they were going to be doing an episode on cancel culture and that it was going to be featuring Gabbie Hanna and Perez Hilton. Now, I watched this one, obviously, because I was just kind of curious about what was going to be said. And I feel like before we get into the actual episode and kind of what was said on the episode and what happened, I do just want to give sort of a brief overview of what I think the episode was supposed to be about and why I think that this episode, because of the guests they had on and just the conversation, sort of missed the mark. I think the sort of point of this episode was to talk about the problems with cancel culture and was also supposed to talk about online harassment and the way that it impacts people. And that's actually why Gabbie Hanna was brought on, was to sort of be the face of the negative side effects of being canceled. I think the way that they had envisioned it being set up was that Perez was sort of supposed to be the canceler and Gabbie was supposed to be the cancelee. And she was going to kind of come in and be the face of what Perez Hilton did with his actions. And honestly, I just feel like before we even get into what happened, it's important to say that I think from the start, the premise of the show was not exactly ideal. I think to begin with, the stuff that Perez Hilton did to celebrities in the early 2000s is very, very, very different than the criticism that Gabbie Hanna gets on YouTube. Perez Hilton used his power and influence to convince people that celebrities were doing drugs, to convince people that celebrities were doing these really horrible, corrupt things when there was no evidence, to basically try to say that because Lindsay Lohan bought an expensive bag, she was an evil person. He outed many celebrities, including Clay Aiken, before they were ready to come out of the closet, and also would spread malicious gossip that he heard from his friends and just sort of run with those narratives and blast it to millions of people on the internet. And that is not at all what happened to Gabbie Hanna. So right off the bat, I think I was just a little confused. Even watching the trailer, I was confused by the premise, because I was confused why Gabbie Hanna was this sort of representative of cancel culture gone wrong. I know that from Gabbie's perspective, she thinks that the way that Perez treated those celebrities is the way that she was treated. And I know that she thinks that she was sort of the victim of an internet hate mob. Every single thing that happened to Gabbie, barring a couple of situations, was a direct result of Gabbie's own action. For example, with the Kenza Cosmetics thing, she doesn't like that everybody called her a scammer, but she promoted a scammy company. And then instead of taking accountability for that and just being hey guys, sorry, I fucked up on that, she doubled down, refused to apologize, and told everyone to just manage their expectations and basically blamed her audience for believing her sponsorship. She's mad that people think that she is a rape apologist. However, the reason people think that about her is because she herself, in a video posted in 2021, said that she sat down and listened to a convicted side of the story, even though his victim was her former best friend. Everything that happened is a direct result of her own actions. I honestly think it's low-key insulting to the celebrities that Perez Hilton literally harassed for a decade to compare what they went through to what Gabbie Hanna is going through, which is the direct consequences of her own action. At the end of the day, the things that are going on with Gabbie Hanna are not rumors or gossip. They are people's reaction to her action. And I just want to make that super clear, because if you watch the episode from Gabbie's perspective, that is not at all what this is. And I don't think that's a fair assessment of the situation. Both Gabbie Hanna and Perez Hilton are both incredibly problematic in their own ways. And both of them have hurt a ton of people with their actions. And both of them refuse to take accountability for their actions. Even in this Red Table Talk, like neither of them take accountability for anything that they did that resulted in both of them having these issues that they have now. So anyway, that's like my mini rant before we actually get into the episode. But I just want to say, like, even before starting, I wrote all of that before I even watched the episode. I just watched the trailer and I was like, I feel as if this is what it's going to be. And I was right. And I was like, and I know that like right off the bat, people need to know that if you wanted to have somebody hold Perez Hilton accountable for what he's done, Gabbie Hanna was not the one. She was not the example of a celebrity who was completely innocent and has just had this like hate mob thrust upon her. Like that is not a good example. Anyway, let's break down what actually happened on the show because I have a lot of thoughts about what was actually said as well. The first 3 minutes of the show was basically just all three of the hosts talking about cancel culture. Basically, they kind of laid out what the premise of the show was going to be, which is that most of them agree and think that cancel culture has gone too far. And honestly, I think that this is a topic that a lot of people are going to have a lot of different thoughts about and a lot of people are going to disagree on. So obviously I'm presenting this from like my perspective of how I feel, but I also know that my opinions on cancel culture are not universal. I think this is a very heavily debated topic. And I think the reason for that, honestly, is because it's not just like internet culture anymore. Politicians are starting to use the word. Fox News is using the term cancel culture. CNN is talking about cancel culture for like all different types of people. So I think that's why it's become this sort of heavily debated topic because it has become so politicized. But I obviously have my opinion, and that is this. I don't think cancel culture even fully exists. I believe that it exists in some capacity, but I don't really believe that it exists in the capacity people think it does. The biggest question I ask people is like, if you're talking about cancel culture, who has actually been canceled and like fully lost everything, unable to make money? There's very few people that have actually been canceled, and that's because those people did things that were like illegal. They're in prison. That was their canceling. Like the legal system put them in jail. Harvey Weinstein is a person that comes to mind of somebody who I personally think was rightfully held accountable and sent to jail or going to be sentenced to jail for their actions. I also think it's interesting because one of the hosts, Emily, was talking and she basically said that she thinks people who are racist should be held accountable. She thinks people who do illegal activity should be held accountable, but she doesn't think that like 14-year-olds on Twitter should necessarily have to worry about or have an opinion on those types of issues. And she thinks that kids getting involved is where things get dicey. And I don't disagree with this statement, but I also don't agree with it. I disagree with the fact that young people shouldn't be involved in these types of conversations. I actually think they are the most important people to be involved in these types of conversations. I actually love that young people care about social causes and care about doing what's right and care about making their voices heard when it comes to social and political change. And sometimes that does mean calling out people who have done bad things. My husband's younger sister is a teenager. She's a young girl and she has a lot of opinions about like, you know, issues that involve the LGBTQIA plus community. She has a lot of opinions about YouTubers that she follows when they do things wrong. She has a lot of opinions about precedents that she wants to set in her personal life of people that she won't allow to sort of be around her anymore because of maybe their political or, you know, religious beliefs or things like that. And it does make me kind of sad that she has to think about all of those things and worry about all of those things because I wasn't thinking about those things when I was 14. But I also love the fact that she's so socially aware and socially conscious and that she has a strong moral code that she's trying to stick to at such a young age and that she knows who she does and does not want to support based on their actions. Like, I actually love that about her. And having worked in a school with a bunch of kids that are a similar age, a lot of them feel that way. It's not crazy to think that with the way that especially the socio-political climate in America has gotten more and more intense over the last few years, and with the way that social media is so much more accessible to young people, it's not crazy to think that kids are now involved in this stuff. And I think that is a good thing. I agree with this point in the sense that I think sometimes young people are the ones who are sort of leading this like online trolling or online sort of hatred or saying like online bullying. I do think that mostly that is young people who partake in that. And that's mostly because they haven't fully understood the consequences of of saying horrible things like that to another person yet. I think the focus needs to be less on kids shouldn't have an opinion at all, and should be more focused on how do you have an opinion that does not turn into bullying or trolling or hate speech. How do you toe that line? How do you exist online without crossing boundaries and crossing lines? The reality is, though, is that even though I do think kids make up a large portion of the sort of population of people on the internet that do take things too far when it comes to people getting canceled or held accountable, they're the ones sending really vicious comments, hate comments, just bullying, frankly. While I do think that kids make up that majority and younger people make up that majority, I also will say that trolling and hate comments and mean comments have been around since the beginning of the internet. Like, that's never not been a thing on the internet. I feel like people focus way too much on the like canceling of it all. I think we need to be more focused on teaching younger people and just people in general that when you hold someone accountable, that does not give you a free pass to bully and harass people. The general sort of gist of the beginning discussion, though, was that cancel culture has always been around and people have always had opinions, but that has been made worse because of social media, and they almost frame it as if it's something that like people need to be aware of and afraid of. Now, I know I'm sorry I'm harping on this, but I just still think this is an important point to make too. I don't necessarily think that ultra famous people should be the ones talking about cancel. The only people that are nervous about cancel culture are the people that it could directly affect. The average everyday person isn't getting canceled. Like, they're not getting broadcasted for mistakes that they've made. The only reason people think this is such a big deal and have such a strong opinion is because the people who are directly affected by it constantly talk about it and constantly say what a bad thing it is, which makes you think it's a bad thing too. The root of cancel culture is not to make someone's life a living hell. The root of cancel culture is to hold people accountable and set precedents for future situations. Anyway, we're gonna get into that in a second, but I just wanna say that too, because I think the whole, like, I really was a little bit off put by the way that the initial conversation was going. My biggest frustration with this whole episode, and not even just this episode, but like when people talk about cancel culture in general, my biggest frustration with it is that nobody offers like a solution. People just want to sit there and be like, well, cancel culture is dangerous. It's bad. It's toxic. It's terrible. Okay, what's the solution then? Do we give people free reign to do whatever the fuck they want? Do we just never call out people's actions when they fuck up? Like, what is the solution? Everybody just wants to say it's bad, but like, what is the alternative to this? Anyway, God, this is gonna be much more of a rant than I thought it was, but I had a lot of thoughts. I was scripting this and I was like, so Perez Hilton is the first guest, and he comes out and sort of talks about his past history online, his sort of problematic history online. And they also discuss the way that he outed the Fifth Harmony member Lauren and Clay Aiken, and kind of the effects that that had on them as people, and if that was the right thing to do. Perez makes a really interesting comparison where he basically says that he was addicted to the attention that his online blog brought him, and that he was so addicted to that attention that he was doing things that he knew were wrong and doing things that he knew were bad, but he was doing them anyway because he just wanted the clicks and the clout and sort of the attention that talking shit about other people brought him. He does look back on some of his past actions and admit that they were wrong. However, he also defends some more recent actions that happened. Like, there was an instance on TikTok where he was sort of shit-talking Charli D'Amelio, who at the time was 15 years old, and he got banned from TikTok because of his actions, and he was like really upset about it. And even now, he can't sit there and admit that like he shouldn't have been talking shit about a 15-year-old. So even though he claims that he regrets what he did in the early days, I think the biggest reason that Perez Hilton as a person tried to pivot away from his platform was because it was no longer successful, because people no longer wanted to read the sort of garbage that he was putting out. He also, when they're talking about him outing people like Clay Aiken and Lauren, he does try to defend, especially the Lauren from Fifth Harmony situation, where he's like, well, it was a public photo, like it was being spread around. And I actually agreed with Emily's point here, where people's sexuality and sort of relationships and interpersonal relationships like that aren't news. Sort of line in the sand should be drawn when it comes to boundaries, because just because somebody is a celebrity doesn't mean that they deserve to be outed to the entire world because a picture that was from like a family wedding leaked. Doesn't mean they should be outed to the entire world because they do something that is not inherently wrong. It's just like their personal life and personal business. And honestly, I think that's an interesting conversation worth having too, which is like, where is the line with celebrities? I think that the line of what is and isn't acceptable to post and talk about online when it comes to celebrities is heavily blurred. I think that we just consume all different types of information about all different types of people. There are no boundaries or personal space. Everybody just reports on whatever is being reported on. Something like a divorce or somebody cutting their hair or somebody kissing a girl should not be worldwide national news, but for some reason it is. I think the only time it's pertinent to talk about interpersonal relationships of like celebrities would be in instances where their relationships with other people are a direct indication of their personality or things that they've done. Like the David Dobrik situation is a perfect example. That was a time where it's totally necessary and pertinent to discuss the way that he interacted with other people and the effect it had on those people, the relationships, the behind the scenes of how he treated people. Same thing with the James Charles situation, the Gabbie Hanna situation, Jeffree Star situations. Like those are the times when I think it's important and pertinent to bring up things that might happen behind the scenes. However, if David Dobrik was gay and everybody behind the scenes knew that, but he didn't want to come out publicly yet, it's nobody's business to talk about that. And honestly, I think what was sad about the Perez segment, because it only lasted a few minutes, first of all, I think their biggest mistake was trying to squeeze this conversation into 21 minutes. That's just like not possible. This is such a big, broad concept, but regardless, I think that the thing that was really missed with the Perez Hilton interview, and the thing that I would have loved to hear people talk about and sort of just like discuss, is what happens when the person who is trying to hold people accountable needs to be held accountable themselves. Like what happens when the person who is exposing the things is just as bad as the people they're exposing? We don't really know how to navigate that super well yet. Even in mainstream media, like it's really difficult to navigate what you do when the person who's supposed to be calling other people out is an equally shitty person. We see this on mainstream media. There was just an example with CNN when Chris Cuomo, who was a CNN news anchor, there was an internal investigation done and it showed that he helped his brother, who was my governor, actually Governor Andrew Cuomo, not my governor anymore, thank God, but when he was going through a lot of allegations of sexual misconduct, it was shown that Chris Cuomo was helping him and using his journalistic resources in order to help his brother and try to get him out of this situation. And Chris Cuomo was rightfully fired from CNN, as he should have been. You don't get to use those resources that you get from delivering the news to try to help your own family members out of really, really serious allegations. And that was a pretty cut and dry case. It was like CNN found out he did this and he was fired. Cut and dry. Okay. But there's other cases where it's not that cut and dry. If anybody remembers John Kuckian, who was on YouTube, that was like a really good first example of a drama channel that was holding people accountable and reporting on drama that eventually needed his own drama channels just to report on the horrible, shady shit that he was doing. So like, I think that would have been a more pertinent conversation, because I do think that that's a problem when people who are reporting on this stuff or talking about this stuff take things too far and in turn become part of the problem. Like, I think that's a great conversation. But the conversation on the show was just so much more focused on them trying to get Perez to admit that what he did was wrong. And it's like, yeah, it was wrong. It's obvious it was wrong, but like, where's the solution in that? There was no solution brought forward from that. I also think that it's dangerous to equate what Perez Hilton does with what all people who talk about gossip or news outlets or anything like that equate him to all of those people, because I do think that there's very different tiers of drama and commentary and news reporters and very different levels of people who are doing a similar job where they're talking about the same things, but I think there are people who do it ethically and I think there are people who don't. Perez Hilton was not a person who was ethically trying to hold people accountable or ethically trying to distribute news to people. He was a person who was exploiting celebrities for his own personal gain for the better part of of the early 2000s. So after the sort of Perez Hilton segment, they brought out Gabbie Hanna. And Gabbie Hanna came in kind of hot because they had just been talking about Lauren from Fifth Harmony being outed by Perez. She basically came in and said that he wasn't taking accountability for anything and that he was a fucking hypocrite. And I don't disagree with her on that. I just think she is the absolute wrong person to be delivering that message to someone like Perez Hilton. And this is something that Perez actually pointed out to her. He was like, to be called a hypocrite by you is a little bit laughable because a lot of people could say the same things about you. They could say that you are a hypocrite and that you don't take accountability. And I think this is where I got a little frustrated with the show, because in the show, Perez Hilton basically said, you people at home can do their research and they can find a lot of instances where you didn't take accountability for your actions. Gabbie Hanna basically said that if people actually look into what happened, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. If people actually look into the story, there's nothing there. She's done nothing wrong. And on top of that, she never seeks out drama, and the drama community seeks out her. This is where I got annoyed with the producers. I wasn't even annoyed at like the Estefans. Like, this is a producer's job. To put Gabbie Hanna on this show and just go with her narrative of things and paint her as this victim of cancel culture, and to not even remotely show the things that she had done to get her to that point. All they showed was this one clip where she was like crying and saying that she couldn't do anything without people being mad at her. And like, that was the clip that they showed to try to paint the picture that like when people are canceled, it makes them sad. None of that is fucking true. None of that is true. I even wrote in my notes in all caps, not fucking true, because that's not true. For Gabbie Hanna to sit there with a straight face and say, I never searched out drama, drama searched out me, when she's admitted both in a BuzzFeed article and on an Instagram live, I think it was an Instagram live, might have been a TikTok live, don't want to get my facts mixed up. She sat on an Instagram/TikTok live and said in a BuzzFeed article that she actively caused a shitstorm this past summer because she wanted to drum a pipe for her new series. For Gabbie Hanna to say that she did not start any of this drama and she did not start any of this chaos is a bold-faced lie. I have an entire video breaking down the timeline of events that brought us to Gabbie Hanna starting her series. I'll link it in the description if you're interested in watching that video. But I have an entire video where I talk point by point of all of the people that she targeted and went after just because she wanted a little bit of attention and she wanted the internet to go on fire and get trending so that she could get attention brought to her series. So for her to sit there and say that she's never brought any of this upon herself is just a bold-faced lie, first of all. Second of all, if you look into the Gabbie Hanna situation, like Perez Hilton says you should, and if people want to do their own research, you will absolutely find instances where Gabbie Hanna deserved the criticism that she got. Will you find instances where she didn't deserve the criticism? Absolutely. And I have always said that not every criticism against her has been valid. However, the main reason that Gabbie Hanna has gotten in so much shit on the internet is not even because of like all of the stuff that she's done, like it partially is, but the bigger reason is because she will not take accountability for literally anything that she ever does wrong. She will never sit there and just take accountability for what happened. She will never sit there and actually apologize for things that have happened. She just sits there and constantly deflects and shifts blame to other people and lies, and then when she gets caught in her lies some more. So honestly, the whole Gabbie Hanna segment was just such bullshit to me, and I think it probably was, especially based on the comments, it was to everyone who knew about the Gabbie Hanna situation, because it was all lies. Like, none of it was fact-checked. Everything was painted to make her seem like this victim of cancel culture. There was a part where she talks about how she like lost record deals and she lost money and she lost sponsorships. The reason that all happened was a direct result of her actions and the way that she handled things. For Gabbie Hanna and the producers and everyone there to sit there and paint her as the victim of this situation is just comical to me. Like, it discounted pretty much everything that was talked about in the episode because it's not true and it's not what happened. After the Gabbie Hanna segment, they brought out a professor who kind of briefly talked about cancel culture from a more macro scale, and I did think that conversation was interesting. They asked her these really broad questions about cancel culture, and she basically was just like, it really depends on the person, depends on who's upset. There's so many different factors that go into cancel culture, and it's also very different person to person how people feel. She used Michael Jackson as an example, how some people love him, some people will always think about the sort of allegations made against him in regards to stuff with children. She talked about Bill Cosby, how he was released from jail and is now trying to do a documentary, and how he's trying to get people to sort of watch that and watch his story, and how some people are always going to say no, no, fuck you, but other people are going to go to his shows and support him. But I think my biggest problem with this episode, and I touched on this at the beginning of the video, but I think it's important to touch on it again. My biggest problem with this episode was that I don't think that the major question around cancel culture should be how do we stop cancel culture from happening. I think it should more be focused on how do we create an environment where people don't have to get canceled in the first place. What's happening right now and what people refer to as cancel culture, personally, and this is where I might lose some people, I understand, I know this is just like a me opinion, I get it. If you have a different opinion, that's fine, but this is mine. I don't think of cancel culture as this like negative, horrible thing. I think of it as a reckoning. Decades upon decades upon decades, it's been socially acceptable to be openly racist. It's been socially acceptable to be transphobic, homophobic, sexist, misogynistic, basically every like ism you could think of. It was socially acceptable to do those things. Even like 10 years ago, it was still socially acceptable to do these types of things. What's happening now is a reckoning to say, no, it's not okay anymore. It's not okay to be openly racist anymore. It's not okay to be openly homophobic anymore. It's not okay to be openly sexist anymore. These things are not okay, and you're gonna have consequences if you do them. People always look at cancel culture as the problem, and what I don't think they realize is that it's actually the solution. It's the solution for centuries of people who have been oppressed and marginalized by this sort of rhetoric in our society being allowed to happen. This is the moment where we are saying enough is enough. You can't do these things anymore. You can't, in like the case of Shane Dawson, you can't build your entire platform off of being racist and then still be one of the most successful creators on the platform. In the case of like David Dobrik, you can't set up these sexual assault of your friend and then still be okay to have a platform. In the case of Gabbie Hanna, you cannot openly sympathize with your friend's race and still have a platform. What's happening right now is precedents being set for future generations. I think the thing that really frustrated me about this episode is that a lot of the conversations at the end of the episode really shifted into like, we need to approach things with love. We need to approach things with, you know, compassion. We need to be able to disagree with people and still coexist with them. I'm sorry, like fuck no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm so sick of that narrative being pushed, especially politically. I am not gonna be nice to someone who doesn't believe that Black and brown people deserve basic human rights. I am not gonna be nice to someone who thinks that if you grew up in poverty, you deserve to die of cancer at 12 years old. I'm not gonna be nice to you. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna approach you with love and compassion. Fundamentally disagree on basic human rights. There's no love and compassion that can fix that. I think that this sort of really idealized version of what we wish the world could be is not the actual reality of what the world is. There are people that would kill my best friend because he dates men, and I'm supposed to approach you with love and compassion. Fuck no. We don't have to hear out Gabbie Hanna when she has tried to openly defend and say that she heard out a side of the story. We don't have to approach someone with love if they outed somebody's sexuality to the rest of the world before they were ready to come out. Those things are not approached with love. We as a society, especially in America, are fucking broken right now. And the question shouldn't be, oh my God, how do we protect people who are being held accountable? It should be, how do we not have to hold people accountable in the first place? How do we create a society where this shit doesn't have to happen at all? Or at the very least, I think we need to take a really hard look at the difference between holding somebody accountable and actively bullying and harassing people online. If the message was, hey, don't bully and harass people online, don't push them to the edge where they're like debating if they should be alive or not, that's a conversation I think we should have. I would love to have a conversation about the way that people use holding people accountable as a way to push them to the edge of their own life. I think that's a great conversation to have because pushing it too far is absolutely a problem. But what is the alternative to not doing anything at all? Like, what is the alternative to that? Attacking people for their looks or appearance or shit they can't control, or using it as a way to tell people to themselves, yeah, that's never the answer. And I absolutely agree with that. And I think that's a conversation worth having. But saying canceling somebody in general or not holding people accountable in general is the solution is setting us back so fucking far. Honestly, this whole entire episode was just a miss for me. And it was sad because I've watched the show before, like I said, and I really liked it. But I think that the guests of the show were so much more focused on making themselves look better and trying to have this redemption arc than they were about actually having having a conversation about the problems that do come along from canceling, which is like the bullying and harassment. They were more so focused on saying like they shouldn't have been held accountable at all in the first place, and that was the problem. I don't know. That's it for me. Sorry, I just yelled. I got a little heated, but this is definitely more of a ranty video. Let me know down below if you guys watched the Red Table Talk, what your thoughts were on it, what you think about everything. I'm very curious to know your thoughts. I love you guys so much. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, or just subscribe, or do neither. Honestly, just so happy you're watching me. Thank you so much for being here. My merch, including my limited edition Glomus merch, my social media, and both of my channels, my podcast and my vlog channel, will be linked down below. I'm posting on my vlog channel every day in the month of December, so go check it out. And yeah, I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!